Inihahandog ng UPCMC Departamento ng Broadcast at ng Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman. Kasama ang Philippine Studies Association at DZUP. Ang pagdiriwang ng ika-100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.
Where is our life? And I tell you,
Hindi pa rin natatapos ang pangamba ng ilang mga taga.
You are choosing to come in at one of the worst times in the Philippines to be a journalist.
There's absolutely no reason for the reporter to keep quiet.
There are forces in society that have an interest in not exposing the truth.
Sa unang episode ng mga Panayam, ipinaliwanag ko na nabuo ang mga panayam noong mga buwan ng Marso hanggang Mayo taong 2021. Maglilimang taon na si Duterte bilang presidente sa panahong yon at ikalawang taon ng COVID-19 pandemic. Gaya ng nasabi ko, isa sa mga kursong itinuro ko at ni Ivy Claudio sa panahong ito ang Broadcast Journalism 130 na may pamagat na Issues in Broadcast News and Public Affairs. Sa tingin namin, lubhang napapanahon ang kurso dahil nakababahala hindi lamang ang mga balita, kundi maging ang pagbabalita sa panahon ng isang kontrobersyal na pangulo na lalong naging komplikado dahil sa krisis pangkalusugang hatid ng pandemya. Upang marinig namin at ng aming mga estudyante ang tayo o estado ng pamamahayag sa panahon ni Duterte, napagkasunduan namin ni Ivy na mag-interview ng mga journalist para marinig kung ano ang kanilang mga opinyon tungkol sa bagay na ito at magpakwento ng mga karanasan nila bilang mamamahayag. Ako po si Betsy Enriquez at narito ang aking mga panayam. Ang tema ng episode na ito ay tungkol sa public affairs programs na bahagi ng broadcast journalism. Ang ating panauhin, isang veterano at multi-awarded na journalist at kilalang dokumentarista, si Ginoong Howie Severino. Si Howie ang kasalukuyang Vice President for Professional Development ng GMA Network. Siya ay news anchor ng GMA News TV at batikang dokumentarista ng Eyewitness na isa sa pinakamatagal na umeereng public affairs program sa Pilipinas. Si Howie rin ang podcaster sa kauna-unahang podcast ng GMA, ang The Howie Severino Podcast. Mahigit 3 dekada ng mamamahayag si Howie. Siya ay co-founder ng Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism o PCIJ noong 1989 at kasalukuyang chairman ng Board of Editors. Naging reporter siya sa The Probe Team. Una kong itinanong kay Howie ang isang tanong na sa palagay ko ay napaka-relevant sa buhay ng mga journalist ngayon. Gaano kahirap maging broadcast journalist sa panahon ng Duterte administration? At gaya ni Maria Ressa, idinaing ni Howie na napakahirap nito.
Maraming paraan, no, sa pagpapasagot niyan. Siguro unahin ko na lang na pag-usapan natin yung epekto ng pandemya, no. Kasi sa tingin ko yan ay yung kasalukuyan nating problema sa pandemya. Epekto rin yan, no, ng pagpapabaya ng pamahalaan. So kasama yan sa hirap natin, ano. Bago pa nagpandemya, may climate of fear na sa Pilipinas, no. Hindi lang para sa mga mamamahayag, pero sa mga ordinaryong tao, lalo na yung mga aktivista, yung mga abogado, mga huwes, etc., mga kritiko, marami sa ating lipunan na independent thinkers, no, na ay hinaharas, ini-intimidate, tinatakot, no. So hindi lang po mga mamamahayag yan. Pero sa larangan naman ng journalism, dahil wala kaming choice kundi mag-cover, no. Marami sa amin ang ngayon ay napipilitan mag-ingat. I mean, even more so than before, no. In two ways. Na one, alam natin na kahit ginagawa lang namin yung trabaho namin, pwedeng matwist yung aming mga salita, pwede kaming i-troll, i-threaten, kahit lehitimo yung aming komentaryo o yung aming ipinapahayag na information, no. So pre-pandemic yon, may ganun na tayong climate of fear, no. So for more than a year now, on top of that, we have had to perform this role sa gitna ng pandemya, no. And dito nire-report namin yung mismanagement ng pandemya, no. Lahat ng nangyayari dito sa pandemya. Kasama diyan yung resulta ng mga polisiya. Yung iba doon ay maling polisiya dito sa pag-manage ng pandemya. At ang experience ng marami sa amin ay pag nagpahayag kami, nagbahagi kami ng mga naobserbahan namin na hindi pabor sa pamahalaan, hindi pabor sa administrasyon, ay katakot-takot na trolling yung nagaganap, no. Siyempre yung mas prominente sa amin, yung mas visible sa amin, ang mas nagiging target. Pero nakikita naman natin kahit yung mga bata, kahit yung mga yung tawag mga sa akin veteranong journalist, no, kahit yung mga hindi veterano, ano, ay tinitrete na rin ngayon. Sa panahon na napaka-importante ang factual reporting, ang evidence-based na sharing ng information, ay nagkakaroon pa ng ganitong klaseng klima, no. So ang laking sagabal para sa katotohanan.
Sabi ni Howie, nag-iingat silang mga journalist ngayon sa kanilang pag-uulat. Itinanong ko naman kung may kaugnayan ito sa hindi pag-renew ng prangkisa ng ABS-CBN at maging sa matatawag nating panggigipit sa mga media organizations gaya ng Rappler at Inquirer. Kung may chilling effect ba sa mga journalist ang mga pangyayaring ito?
Sa observation ko, oo. Pero bihira kang makahanap ng media organization na aamin Na natatakot sila or may chilling effect or mas nag-iingat sila ngayon kaysa dati, you know. Kasi meron din naman kaming pride, no? So we take pride in our courage, we take pride in our history and yung heritage ng Philippine journalism na mana namin. Pero ayon sa aking obserbasyon and then observations of many others, nakikita natin yan. Ang dami na ngayon kasing na-weaponize, no? Hindi lang yung tunay na weapons na baril na dati nang ginagamit sa amin, no? Of course, the Philippines has long been one of the world's leaders in killings of journalists. So, dahil meron tayong ganong klaseng kasaysayan, madaling manakot, no? Na maaring mangyari din sa amin, sa mga buhay pa, yung mga nangyayari na sa mga ibang colleagues namin, no? And of course, marami sa amin may mga pamilya, you know, marami sa amin ay wala namang tinatago, alam ng mga ibang tao kung saan kami nakatira, kung saan kami nag-uopisina, kung ano yung mga ruta namin sa pang-araw-araw, kung saan kami pumapasok, ano yung mga beats na kino-cover namin. So, pag may mga ganyang klaseng banta, I mean, bilang isang responsableng tao na may pamilya, ay talagang mas mag-iingat ka. Di ba? So, in terms of yung physical security. Now, dahil may ganung klaseng banta, syempre, yung physical security namin is connected to our jobs, no? So, we have to think, many of us have to think twice before we say anything na critical. At the same time, no, hindi namin masyadong napapag-usapan to kasi at least dun sa mga journalists na kilala ko, no, na kasi ang assumption ay we still call a spade, no? I mean, wala naman masyadong ipinagbago doon sa aming commitment. Pero yung terms of the realities ng aming paligid, no, maraming pinagbago.
Seryosong usapin yung chilling effect ng panggigipit ng pamahalaan sa Rappler, ABS-CBN at Inquirer. Kaya itinanong ko kay Howie kung dahil dito ay may alituntunin ba ang GMA sa pag-handle ng news at public affairs?
Ang laging sinasabi lang ay kailangan kami maging fair, no? So, alam ko maraming iba't ibang pananaw tungkol sa fairness, no? I mean, minsan tinatawag kaming unfair ng iba't ibang panig, pero pag sinuri namin ulit yung aming ulat, parang sa aming pananaw ay fair naman, no? I mean, hindi lang pabor doon sa isang panig or ganun talaga minsan ganun talaga ang reality, ganun talaga ang bagsak ng ebidensya, di ba? Magmumukhang hindi pabor doon sa isang panig, tas ang interpretation doon unfair, no? So, ang tanging gabay talaga sa amin na ay maging fair, no? Now, malaking debate rin yan kung ano yung fairness, no? Pwede na natin pag-usapan yan. Halimbawa, kung yung pagiging fair ba ay kailangan laging ipapakita yung two sides of an issue. Diba? Kasi halimbawa, pag sinabing nagbabago yung klima, climate change, no? Kailangan ba mag-quote ng mga climate change deniers? Diba? Pag doon sa larangan ng bakuna, kailangan ba laging kunin yung other side, yung mga nagde-deny ng bisa ng bakuna, no? O yung mga nagsasabing just a very simple example, no? Pag sinasabing the world is round, kailangan ba mag-quote ng flat earthers, no? Oo, but that's the other side. Di ba? I mean, it's a very tiny minority, pero pwede mong sabihin na so may ganong interpretation ng fairness, no? You have to, and you can take that to an extreme.
Right.
Ako, personally, if you ask me, and I think a lot of my colleagues also agree with me, ang main mission namin ay hanapin yung katotohanan, yung facts, yung ebidensya, at ipresenta sa publiko. At bahala na yung publiko magpasya, no? Kung anong magiging final judgment nila doon sa issue, ano?
Nagbalik tanaw ako sa Panayam at naalala ko na ang mga public affairs programs noong mga nakaraang dekada ay mas seryoso. Nitong mga nakaraang taon, lamang na ang entertainment at mga sensational stories lalo na sa news. Ganito ang paliwanag ni Howie.
A big percentage of the programming is really entertainment, di ba? The majority, di ba? Kaya napakahalaga yung natitirang airtime for news and public affairs, no? So,
Yes.
para sa amin, mga journalist at siguro para din sa inyong mga mulat na viewer, no? Mahalaga yung airtime na yon, no? So, maaring yun nga kinakain na ng pati yung hallowed space na yon ay maaring kinakain na, no? But to what extent na nangunguna na yung entertainment versus news and public affairs in terms of that space, no? Yung news and public affairs, no? I'm not so sure, no? Kung there's more entertainment than, I mean, just as an example, I mean, you know, I don't necessarily have the big picture always in mind kasi ang main job ko ngayon, I mean, I don't decide programming issues, no? Wala ako masyadong kinalaman diyan. I'm also an observer, no? I don't manage that part of our company, you know. I do documentaries, no? But sa larangan lang ng documentaries, which are it's long form non-fiction journalism. Okay? For example, yung show ko, Eyewitness, it is, you may know more than me, you know, but I think it is one of the longest running television programs in the Philippines. And it's non-fiction, it's documentary, it's news and public affairs. Ang alam ko lang na mas matagal pa sa amin ay Itbulaga, no? Na talagang entertainment, no? But imagine, kasi I mean that's a sample size of one show, no? Pero kung talagang sobra ng importante o sobra ng nangingibabaw yung entertainment pagdating sa news and public affairs, eh matagal nang tinanggal yung show ko. But our show is more than, I mean, ako mismo, I've been a presenter of the same show maybe longer than anyone else in news and public affairs, no? So again, I don't want to belabor that point too much, no, in terms of the premise, no? Pero and then instead of reducing airtime for documentaries, GMA is actually increased.
Okay.
So, you know, we have, you know, Eyewitness, we have Front Row, we have I don't know if you've the Atom Arroyo specials, which is a documentary show itself, no? We have a show called Real Time. We had yung show ni Malu Mangahas, which was investigative. It was an long form investigative. So all of these shows were created just in the last 10 years. So, you know, this whole discussion about whether something is entertainment or not, and whether, you know, this particular news story should be counted as entertainment, and whether this public affairs program should be counted as entertainment versus serious programming. You know, I mean, we can take that discussion, you know, there, no? Kung ano yung ano. So before I even, you know, kind of try to explain why entertainment now is dominating news and public affairs, I think we should first see kung ano ba talaga, to what extent is it dominating, and is it really dominating news and public affairs? Because I don't really feel it that much because nobody tells us what to cover sa Eyewitness.
Totoo namang kilala ang GMA sa award-winning na mga public affairs programs. Pero in general, sa lahat ng news programs, hindi lang sa GMA, totoo ring dumami ang oras na iniuukol sa sensational at entertainment stories. Itinanong ko kay Howie kung sa GMA ba ay may panuntunan kung gaano karaming entertainment news ang ipapasok sa news.
Lahat ng mga reporters sa amin, and even at ABS or any other TV station, the ones who cover news, the ones who really take pride in their journalism, you will not find a single one who will not complain that they have had important stories or reports, important to them, that were dropped because of some story that they felt was less important. Let's just put it that way. I mean, kasi importance, okay, I mean, di ba, that's one of the criteria for and what makes news, right? But is entertainment important? Well, when Dolphy died, I mean, di ba? I mean, that was important, and that was he's also an actor. I mean, he never became president, but we felt that was important. That should lead the news. But ako mismo, I've had that experience. I felt I had an important story about COVID about a couple of weeks ago, and then tinawagan pa ako by one of our top bosses to tell me to do this story, etc. etc. Talagang pinaghirapan ko, and then yung mga sources ko inaabangan na sa news, I got dropped for an entertainment story. Eventually it aired on another day, but diba, for that particular night, there was a decision, there was an evaluation, a judgment that my story about COVID, the biggest story in the world, was not as important as this story, no? Sa loob-loob ko, nasaktan ako, but I'm a pro, no? I accept it. I know that I'm just happy. I don't need to make those decisions, right? To drop. But I do know on that same night, they had a number of other COVID stories. They may have had 3 or 4, 5 COVID stories. My COVID story may not have been among the more important. Every reporter thinks their story is super important, kasi pinaghirapan mo yan, inaabangan ng mga sources mo, etc., etc., no? So, but I've also wondered, no? I mean, out of halimbawa 24, kasi I also have to distinguish, no, among news programs. Among all of our news programs, it's really 24. Well, it's our longest. It has the most airtime, diba? It's kind of the flagship news program. It also has the most entertainment news, but it's also because it has the most airtime, diba? If you watch shows like Sona, Saksi, Unang Balita, early morning, you're not going to find a lot of entertainment, as much entertainment news there. I mean, even in terms of percentage. So, like in an hour long, kasi minsan halos isang oras yung 24, no? So, maybe yung body niyan, 40 minutes or 45 minutes. Out of 45 minutes, ilan dun yung hard news? Maaring 15 minutes. There might be, there has to be a study on this. No, I actually haven't done this particular audit, but it's an important question that you raise, and I think it's worth researching in terms of watching like maybe a whole month's worth and actually counting the seconds, because that's really each second on TV has value. So that's where you're going to find out ano ba talaga yung importante para sa stasyon na to, no? And then the why, no? Bakit? Well, the answer is simple, no? Kung bakit maraming entertainment news ngayon, no? It's because TV is a big business. Diba? I mean, hello. I mean, that's diba? Parang the Pope is Catholic, right? So TV is a big business, but the way it's changed is, I think in the past, what was business on TV was mostly entertainment. Yeah. Yung news and even to a certain extent public affairs was kind of the missionary role of broadcast, diba? Well, especially TV. I don't know about radio so much, no. But people who own TV companies realized that a lot of people were watching news, and advertisers were willing to spend a lot for commercials on the news, no, and in public affairs, no.
Pinag-usapan rin namin ni Howie kung paano nabago ng digital media ang news at public affairs programs.
It's an added tool.
Okay.
It's an added tool. So, journalists have always had tools of news gathering, new tools for production, and tools for post-production, and tools for distribution, right? So, digital technology provides tools for every stage of that process.
Right.
So in terms of pre-production, which is research, deciding what story you're going to do, setting up interviews, etc. Of course, nandiyan yung internet research. You've got, you research social media, etc. So that produces like an abundance of information that, we have people full time just looking at, social media, the internet, looking for stories to pitch, right? And then there's production where, all of our equipment now is digital, from our phones, our phone cameras to, what we're doing now, Zoom interviews, et cetera, et cetera. And then post-production, you've got graphics, I just did a documentary about, online romance scams and online, dating apps and all that. So all the interviews are this way, no? So we know that this kind of presentation can get very tiring. If I just show this screen on TV, we're not going to have an audience, no? So what digital technology enabled us to do with our, with expert graphic artists was to dress up this screen with graphics, with bubble heads and, all kinds of animation, etc., all with digital technology to enable us to make it more interesting so that people will watch our story, which we think is important. So that's post-production. And then you have distribution, no? So everything, so right now, before kasi, ang reklamo sa Eyewitness was, bakit sobrang late sa gabi yung programa mo, etc. But, I don't get that feedback as much anymore because, like, for example, our documentary show is no longer only a TV show. We are content. We're content. So meaning that, after a couple of days on TV, we're on the internet in full. And then our social media team, our digital team, makes our 30-minute documentaries into like 5-minute vignettes or stories, diba? For easy sharing on Instagram or what have you, or even shorter than that, 1 or 2 minutes, no? And then, then there's a lot of conversation about it. So there's, that's also part of distribution and also part of our feedback. So again, to make the short answer is it's very, very useful. It has enabled television to have a feedback loop. Because when I first started, and when we first started watching TV, it was a one-way street, right? TV people were talking straight to the audience, but the audience could only scream at their appliance. Right? We had no way of communicating with that person. In TV, there's no tradition of letters to the editor, unlike newspapers since centuries ago, where you can write a letter to the editor and rant and criticize and all of that. Sa TV, walang tradition na ganon. No anchor will read like a letter to the anchor, di ba? Walang ganon, no? But with social media, it's actually empowered TV viewers to give us feedback even before the program is finished.
Tinanong ko si Howie tungkol sa masasabing downside ng online media, ang disinformation, at paano nila ito minamanage.
We campaign against it. I mean, that's like the most explicit way we're handling it, the most visible way we're handling it. So we started with the Think Before You Click campaign, which is responsible social media, and then kasama doon sa mga messages na yon. I mean, I did a campus tour. I went all over the Philippines, fronting for this campaign. And I mean, in person, no, for this, that's like more than 10 years ago. So we were actually among the first to notice that this is a growing problem. No, the bullying, the falsehood on social media, disinformation, etc., etc. And trolling, of course. So that's one, and then this is followed by maybe another campaign explicitly against disinformation. And I also did a campus tour on this. Talking to a lot of students, etc. And ang tawag namin doon, it had several names, no, but one of our slogans was "Sa totoo lang," di ba? Sa totoo lang. Only the truth. And it's been a theme of mine particularly because it was assigned to me. I mean, although I was always been interested, pero inassign sa akin ng company.
Okay.
Na gawin ito. And to be honest, it's not simply a matter of altruism or patriotism or idealism. The proliferation of falsehood is bad for society and bad for business. So if it's bad for society, it's bad for business. So kahit business lang ang isipin mo, kahit yun lang ang mahalaga sa'yo, we don't like falsehood. So we had, but of course we also care about society.
Of course.
So that's one, no? So we had a campaign. Number two, we've had an internal process. So we had a lot of internal training. Very early on, it's been part of our orientation and our training to identify and prevent falsehoods. We tightened up our vetting process from our digital media to television, to our news shows, to our public affairs shows. And then we've also gotten training in how to detect manipulated photos. Number three, well, we've been part of networks also in terms of trade. Disinformation. I'm sure you're familiar also with some of these networks. Yvonne has been part of these networks, and Cara, and I'm sure Data. There's a Democracy and Disinformation Network, headed by John Neri.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar. And disinformation, the issue of disinformation actually brought a lot of competitors together.
Yes.
Because it's a common concern, it's a common problem. So when we get together and talk about this, and sometimes, even at my house before the pandemic, we used to have people from ABS used to come, people from rival newspapers would come and talk about it. So it's kind of there's a silver lining to disinformation, if there's any at all, right? I mean, it enabled some of us to actually have something to talk about. Pero ang laki ng kalaban, no? Yeah, and well, there's been a sea change also, no, in the way media is organized. For the longest time, mainstream media or traditional media has been described as kind of the information gateway, for everyone else to get information. So we're like the gatekeepers. We're no longer the gatekeepers. I mean, I think it's for any journalist or any media person or any mainstream person to think that he's still a gatekeeper. It's kind of an illusion because wala nang gates, di ba? Wala nang gates. What we are right now are information shepherds. We are shepherds. So, that doesn't mean everyone else is a sheep, right? I mean, no, we're kind of guides. We're tour guides. We will usher in non-information professionals, non-evidence-based professionals, etc., and we will point the way. Bahala sila kung anong In other words, we have no monopoly over access to information, but because of our training, because of our orientation, because of our accountability, and because we don't use fake names, diba? We're not hired trolls, etc., etc. Our skin in the game our coin, to use another cliche, our coin of the realm is our credibility, the trust that people give in us. So when we say this is true and this is not true, this is a good source and this is not a good source, you should believe this and you should not believe that, we are more guides.
Dahil hindi na maihiwalay ang totoo sa hindi totoo, may nararamdaman bang distrust o kakulangan ng pagtitiwala sa mainstream media?
Part of that distrust is earned. It's earned distrust. Part of it, to me, is artificial, because there are forces in society that have an interest in not exposing the truth. Lagi naman ganon. There have always been forces like that, but many more of those forces have been empowered by digital technology and to be honest, by this regime, by this administration, and by this president in particular, who on more than one occasion seems to have intentionally spread falsehood. Part of the dilemma of journalism, even since time immemorial, is hindi naman kami nire-regulate eh. Di ba? Halimbawa, if a doctor commits a series of malpractice acts, he can be deprived of his license and he will not see a hospital or an operating room again, right? Walang ganong klaseng regulatory system sa journalism, and it's intentional, di ba? And that's what makes our profession different from other professions, di ba? And that's what makes it a bit more complicated, and that's also a source of the attacks on us or the distrust, etc. Di ba? Parang may kasabihan na parang inutusan lang bumili ng suka, journalist na, di ba? So meron talagang ganun, no? Meron talagang ganun, no? So I like to think that's why importante yung mga icons eh. Importante yung mga may pangalan sa journalism. Importante yung mga role models. Importante yung mga legends, yung mga, di ba, the Louis Beltrans of this world, and the living ones in this world. Because wala nga kaming licensing system, but one way of judging whether you've been a good journalist is is to ask yourself, is this what Malu Mangahas would have done? Is this what Sheila Coronel would have asked? Is this what Maria Ressa would have decided? Is this what Louis Beltran have written? Is this what John Nery? Ganun lang eh.
Sa pagtatapos ng panayam, tinanong ko si Howie kung ano ang mga hamon sa mga journalist sa mga susunod na taon.
Well, one, we have to survive this pandemic. And one of the things that really pisses me off is that there are so many unnecessary in-person events still being organized by government that they want us to cover, and we're so afraid of not covering kasi baka kami maskupan, and then sometimes it's not really that important, or it could have been done by Zoom. Yeah. So I've had 4 colleagues die already in the last year. And just recently, just last March, we had a cameraman who passed away. So that's the number one challenge. Not even in the next 5 years, maybe in the next few months. No, we need to survive. I mean, we don't know where this pandemic is going. We're very worried. We kasi marami sa amin we're frontliners. No, hindi kami pwedeng magkulong sa office or hindi kami pwedeng magkulong sa bahay. So marami sa amin kailangan pa rin mag-cover. We have to cover the pandemic, and to cover this pandemic, you have to go outside also. And expose yourself to risk, no? So sa akin, that's number one. Number two is we have to survive all the threats to press freedom. We have to survive all the threats to our human rights, no? Ang dami niyan, no? Our human rights as Filipinos, no? Our human rights as journalists, as professionals. Well, we could go on and on about that, but I know that you're probably running out of time then. No? But so that's number two. Number three, I mean, we have to somehow know how to use social media. We need to know how to make sure that digital technology remains a human tool and that humans don't become the tools of technology. You know what I mean? Kasi right now, for example, we're at the mercy of algorithms. Very often, things are, so much of our lives now are automated that may isang tao na maaring pinrogram yung software years ago, and up to now it's making decisions about what we see on Facebook, on what on what's being shared, on what's et cetera, no? And that's driving a lot of the threats and dangers to journalists. That's one. Siguro another is to continue developing the next generation of journalists so that they remain true to the original spirit of journalism.
Ang payo ni Howie sa mga nangangarap maging journalist, pag-isipang mabuti kung nababagay sa propesyong ito. Sabi niya, hindi pwede dito ang mahina ang loob. Kailangan ng talino at kailangan ding handa sa isang exciting na buhay. Marunong makipag-usap sa mangingisdaman o senador, sa rebelde man at sundalo, at kayang hanapin ang kanilang katauhan o humanity. Ako si Betsy Enriquez at ito ang aking panayam kay Howie Severino.
Ang programang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng UPCMC Departamento ng Broadcast at Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman, kasama ang Philippine Studies Association at DZUP, sa pagdiriwang ng ika-100 taon ng broadcasting sa Pilipinas.